Deputy Chair, I've requested that for the next session, we distinguished delegates, may I now call upon Mr. Ralipenya for the South African delegation. We're moving on to the first panel for the day, and the title of the panel is Creating Synergies Between Djibouti Code of Conduct, the JEDA Agreement, and other regional capacity building initiatives. He will come here and call his panel, and then we can get the proceedings underway. Over to you, Mr. Ralipenya.
Good afternoon, colleagues. This is one session where we engage with each other. We don't just listen, we listen and we ask questions and we make comments and we interrogate what you are telling us. And please, this is South Africa, feel free to express yourself. You are protected by the constitution of this country. We won't, you won't go to jail. That we are sure of. May I please call the colleagues who are supposed to be here. Martin is here. Where's the IOC? Where is Raj? Where is the IOC? Yeah, everyone please come to the fore. Everyone please come here. If you are on this session. EU, the first two. EU CAP, Crimario, IOC, IFC, UNODC, and UK. Please come to the fore. Please come sit here come sit next to me. I like talking to people who are closer to me. Yeah. I think I have enough chairs. Thanks. Just before we start getting lazy because of the lunch and the good food that we have just eaten, if you are supposed to be here on stage and you are not yet here, please you can sit where you are. It's okay. Creating synergies between the DCoC and other regional capacity building initiatives. The previous speakers did allude and emphasized a point, and they said the focus of this workshop, one of them is the operationalization of the DCoC resolutions. And there was emphasis on the meeting that took place in Dubai and the meeting that took place in Jeddah, the previous two meetings. Always when we take decisions, sometimes these decisions never get implemented. And that is purely because sometimes there is a gap within the DCoC when it comes to implementation. However, we take comfort in that we have got the friends of the DCoC who come in and assist in closing this gap by choosing and implementing some of the initiatives that are the resolutions of the DCoC. And as they are here, they really are doing quite a lot of work. Now, the discussion right now, especially I want us to focus on what is it that each of you will do for the DCoC going forward. We know what we have done up to yesterday. So I wouldn't want us to focus on that part. But going forward, assisting and contributing towards the agenda of the DCoC, what are you going to do to assist in the operationalization of the DCoC decisions? Daniel, please be the first. Thank you.
Is it working? Can you hear me? It doesn't. Yes, now it works. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, ministers, all protocols observed. My name is Dania Kossa, and I'm the head of operations of UCAP Somalia. Allow me just 1 minute, and I will do a pitch in 1 minute to say the intervention of the European Union in Somalia. So, aside from the EU Special Representative for the Horn of Africa, below there is the EU delegation, which is the political way forward for the EU action in Somalia. And then we have 3 sister missions. One is UCAP Somalia. It's a civilian crisis management mission. One is EUTM, EU training mission, which deals with the Somali National Army. And one, despite not focusing only on Somalia, is EUNAVFOR Atalanta. And we have the privilege in Mogadishu to have the liaison officer in Atalanta sitting in all our operational morning briefings. Now, UCAP Somalia was started in 2012 as UCAP Nestor, fully focused on the maritime domain and to support the development of the maritime security capacities of Somalia. It was rebranded in 2016. It's rebranded as UCAP Somalia because before it was a regional initiative. It then became focused only on Somalia, being Somalia the key player in the region on developing maritime security capacities. In 2018, we were also requested, aside from our line of operation in the maritime domain, to focus also on the land side to support the police, the Somali police, in their endeavor to strive for the Somali transition plan in the fight with Al-Shabaab. So we're also supporting that. In this capacity here as head of operations, and I was actually privileged to be also in Jeddah last year, I was just fresh new head of operations. And now it's over a year, and I can tell you all the steps that you will see that have been done in the meantime by Somalia and through our support. We should be 169 internationals. We are 140 at the moment, and 53 Somalis in our mission, 46 currently present. We are located in 3 locations, Mogadishu and 2 field offices up in the north, and we have contributions. We represent 21 European states in the mission. Do I have the... oops, I killed it all. Okay, there it is. So I won't go back sharing, so to speak, all the challenges that have been brilliantly mentioned by the previous interventions. But allow me to mention that 33,000 ships are crossing the Gulf of Aden on a yearly basis. And 12% of the world sea trade crosses the Gulf of Aden up to Suez, up to the Mediterranean, and showing the importance to secure the sea line around the Horn of Africa and the Gulf of Aden. We are refocusing, of course, on the Western Indian Ocean. So apologies for this. Out of all these keywords that I meant that you see on the screen, allow me to mention IUU fishing as well, as being one of the targeted and priorities of the Somali government. Here you see, basically, you have some numbers here. You have a population of almost 18 million. And you have the land forces. These are estimations, so don't quote me on that, but roughly these are estimations of land forces and sea forces of maritime law enforcement. Now, as you see, the exclusive economic zone is bigger, actually, than the land territory of Somalia. Now, regarding, and the coast is basically also not favorable to build ports. We have 5 harbors. We have Berbera up in the north, close to the closest, let's say, to Djibouti, which is a modern container port in Somalia. We then have Bosaso in Puntland, which was primarily built to move livestock to the close Middle Eastern countries, which is developing a lot in the last years. Then we have Garad, still in Puntland, which was opened in 2022, which basically has 2 general cargo berths, very small. And then we have Mogadishu, which is a well-functioning, huge port, and the larger harbor in the country. And last but not least, longer down, we have Kismayo, but still not so much developed and with little infrastructure. Now, all this is, and you saw the numbers, so 1,000 people roughly for over 3,300 kilometers. And this is the range of the economic zone. And here you see the assets that Somalia has. The Somaliland Coast Guard, the SPF Department of Coast Guard, the Navy. These are the assets of the Navy. This is the Navy of Somalia. Then you have Bosaso Port Maritime Police Unit, Puntland Maritime Police Force, and then Galmudug in a picture. Now, the equipment, as you may see, are very light and not suitable, if not for coastal patrolling. And the huge exclusive economic zone is totally not addressed, because if you see these boats cannot go much further. Actually, even to reach the 12 nautical miles, which they do. They do because we do exercises outside of the 12 nautical miles with EUNAVFOR Atalanta, but it's a challenge. So you imagine that you have a potential of Somalia, and then you have the assets, which you see. The radar network also consists of single navigation radars, which are used by the own entity while they are on the sea. Who do we interact with? As a mission, these are all our counterparts. The 3 dots is where we are located, our offices. And we deal mainly with the Ministry of Ports in this endeavor, with the Department of Coast Guard, which is under the Minister of Internal Security, with the Navy, the Ministry of Fisheries and Blue Economy, Attorney General Office, and in Puntland with PMPF and BPMPU, and Somaliland Coast Guard. Now, we work a lot, and also with other partners. We're not alone there. There's UNODC back here that works with us. We work with Interpol as well. EUNAVFOR Atalanta, of course, sister mission. There are many counterparts there, but not so many are as present as we are all the time on the ground in Somalia. Now, here are just some pictures of our activities, and we cooperate with all actors that you've seen. In Puntland, we focus on IUU fishing, search and rescue, preventing trafficking, and search and rescue cases. Somaliland, on the whole development, also embedding in the local authorities and in tactical seagoing units that we mentor and train. And in Mogadishu, which of course is the crown jewel that needs to be way more developed, that we work at the ministerial level and we work with the Maritime Police Unit. We started, as of this year, with the civilian Coast Guard functions of the Navy, because we are a civilian mission and the Navy is under the Ministry of Defense. So we work with the civilian Coast Guard functions, and we are truly committed in supporting the country to reach an initial operational capability and to have a national maritime information sharing center that would work. But I put here just the needs and the shortfalls. So as I've shown you with pictures, the control of the exclusive economic zone is not there. Search and rescue capacity. There was actually some cases they manage, if it's not too far, there is a capacity, but still far away from being also internationally recognized by IMO. In IUU, it was mentioned by my Ethiopian colleague before, a case of 2 vessels which were illegally fishing in the waters of Somalia, and to have maritime domain awareness on how to interact also with other regional actors. Now, what can we do as a mission? And as a mission, honestly, I like to say that I can do many things, but I wouldn't do anything unless it's Somali-led and Somali-owned, because for as much assets we may give, it needs to come from them. And since the election of the last government in April last year, I can assure you that despite being focused in the fight with Al-Shabaab and on the land component of the security sector, still the maritime has always been there and has always been in the agenda of the government. Of course, as it was said, there is no Al-Shabaab yet from the sea, but we may say yet. Maybe they will come also from the sea. We're not sure. So it's not a reason to have a lower attention to the Ministry of Ports or to the maritime domain of Somalia. Now, this would be to give some priority. We should give assets to Somalia because boats are not there, but then do training programs and exercises together. When I say together, I hope I will engage, and I will try to engage with my Somali colleagues, with you, especially the closest in the region. I'm not training, I wish I could train also with India all the way down, but with closer neighboring countries that we can do trainings together, have assets, and do training of trainers, because we are a capacity building mission and advising mission. So we provide small support as well, true, like spare parts of boats. I can quote you that in May, the SPF, Somali Police Force, Department of Coast Guard, had 1 operational boat in May this year, and currently there are 4, the one that you saw in the picture, because Mogadishu port has so many boats which are not functional. So in July this year, we donated a boat workshop, and we will also hire a mechanic and support them to train mechanics to fix boats, because otherwise we keep giving boats, and then the boats are gone as soon as they are not functioning. So now we have 4 boats, and in the last month and a half, they were able to inspect over the Department of Coast Guard. They were able to inspect over 100 fishermen boats because of the suspects of Al-Shabaab or trafficking of what they were doing. So the capacity is increasing. They are really striving to do the best they can, but they need international support. And I hope that the Djibouti Code of Conduct matrix will be used and will be consulted also by the Djibouti Code of Conduct friends and delegates to see how they can support Somalia, because Somalia is rightly there in the middle, and it's not a country that can be avoided. if Somalia is not safe, and if illegal transnational crimes are crossing through Somalia, they would be impacting the ones who live up and down along the coast. And we are ready, we stand ready also to partner even more with European programs like the Red Sea in information sharing. We are in November now, we are having a course in Mogadishu of IORIS, and we strive to be together because, again, we're not going to win if we go alone as a mission. We don't have the capacities. But we're there and we stand ready close to the Somali colleagues. And again, allow me to say Somali-led, Somali-owned, but we're there to support. And I hope that I will go away from this meeting and that in a couple of months or in the next high-level meeting, maybe we will be able to show you the pictures of a National Maritime Information Sharing Center in Mogadishu, which we have the place. We have to work on it. We actually even worked over lunch. I hope we can show a little initial operational capabilities. In this, in this session, we are different countries, developed at different levels. So there's nothing to hide. We are, all different and all in different stages, but we need to support each other. And I hope you will be supporting Somalia. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. And we're excited about the kind of assistance that Somalia is receiving. Somalia is benefiting from the programs by our friend of the DCoC. Martin, please talk to us.
Thank you, Minister. Your Excellencies, Ministers, distinguished participants, all protocols observed. Before I delve into the discussion, I wanted to set the scene by explaining where I come from, which has some relevance to the discussion. I'm Maltese, a very small country, island, just a rock, an ex-colony in the middle of the Mediterranean. Totally dependent on safe and secure seas, also one of the 5 neutral countries in the European Union. Now, I'm well aware that I'm preaching to the converted here, but here are my views just the same on the subject of creating synergies between the DCoC, JEDAMEND, and other regional capacity building initiatives, which are no longer a nice thing to have, but a must, in my opinion. And in the few minutes that I will be speaking with you, I hope to explain why and table a proposal for consideration. I'll have the opportunity to go into some depth about what Crimario offers in another 2 briefs later on today and tomorrow when Dave, Deputy Director, will also be presenting. So my discussion now is generally going to be very superficial, high level, and forgive me for this. So every project brings a certain strength, a particular ingredient, which together can help address a plethora of threats and challenges that we face. But every actor also has its limitations, and to quote Minister Chikunga from this morning, individually we are a drop, together we are an ocean. And there is no doubt that it is essential to meet and discuss at prestigious conferences such as these, where we build trust and confidence with one another. We understand each other better, we identify opportunities where we can work together, and we can identify gaps that need to be addressed. We are already doing this on an ad hoc basis, but the question is whether we can improve. Can we move from synergizing efforts to reinforcing combined efforts for common solutions, as challenging as they may be? Only last week I bumped into a non-EU official on a bus at the Nairobi airport, sitting at this table today. And we both concluded that we have no option but to complement one another. Why? Because funds are getting scarcer. Conflicts of a geopolitical nature are intensifying. oceans are too large, and criminals are too flexible. So perhaps it's time to move to some more operationally focused conferences where the operators of Djibouti Code of Conduct countries sit down with friends of the DCoC through capacity generation conferences, similar to how Atalanta does its business, because the EU is not one country. So when the EU comes together to conduct an operation, it conducts these fourth generation conferences, and all the different member states contribute to the operation. Perhaps in the Western Indian Ocean we can emulate such an example. But before contributors come together, there's a clear need to identify what capacities and capabilities are required by priority. And the DCoC has already done a significant work in this regards by completing the capacity building matrix, a fundamental step to building a maritime security and safety architecture, as each country and other actors in the region only have one set of precious assets, which are costly, which needs to be used wisely. The development of a maritime security strategy will, of course, help. And whilst I would not like to sound too pessimistic, the EU has gone through this experience, and it has taken a few years to develop, because all the national interests have to be taken account of the 27 countries. So whilst the DCoC strategy is being drafted, perhaps bottom-up inputs should also be pursued at the same time simultaneously, where lessons learned are fed into the penholders of the strategy. Ideas there are many of what we can accomplish together, and opportunities endless if there is a political will and a commitment from the players. But a proposal that I would like to make, which will focus on long-term benefits, would be the creation, the establishment of a Western Indian Ocean Maritime Safety and Security Academy. And whilst I know I'm a dreamer at times, there is no better platform than a school ship that embarks cadets from all Western Indian nations, because as seafarers know, there's no better way to build solid, long-term friendships than at sea, where teamwork is essential. But coming down to planet Earth once again, for the mid to long-term future, a more mundane proposal. What if, for example, an education and training center had to be developed where partners could provide or sponsor instructors? And I take an example of which I once contributed. Way back in 2000, the US Coast Guard and the Maltese Coast Guard joined forces and set up a search and rescue center for the Mediterranean. It was essential because it brought different members from maritime safety organizations together to practice and learn about search and rescue, but more importantly, they became friends. And by becoming friends, the network in the Mediterranean got closer together. If Malta could do this, anyone can. Coming to Cremario. What can Cremario do? What does Cremario offer? First of all, to be clear, Cremario is an EU-funded maritime capacity building project. It is not only about IORIS, as many tend to believe. The project is funded from EU development funds, so it is not a security and defense tool, as is Atalanta. And the philosophy is that if seas are safer and more secure, all will win because trade will flourish. Our advantage is that we have flexibility. We recruit experts according to the needs of our partners. We have expertise in maritime safety, maritime security, and fisheries monitoring, control, and surveillance experts. Our efforts always start by bringing partners onto the IORIS platform, after which we then mentor, advise, and exercise through the training version of IORIS. We support regional partners' exercises. Last week, we supported DCoC organize an exercise called Watchful Eye in Kenya. We support the Indian Ocean Commission, the Indian Ocean Navy Symposium, Latin American countries. But I'll elaborate more about this afternoon. when I brief about IORIS and Dave tomorrow in panel 3. To conclude, I feel that we are all on the right path, and we are forming a formidable alliance against criminal organizations and providing a consolidated response to the addressing maritime safety challenges, especially thanks to the regional centers. But we must move from policy discussions to operational implementations. And if you allow me to use military speak, we need to train as we fight, as it is pointless doing a lot of training and exercises if this is not put into practice when crisis hits us. So let us continue to build the great spirit that the DCoC community is generating and go one step further by reinforcing our combined efforts together. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Martin. You really have mentioned some very important points. You know, operational conferences will really assist the DCoC in terms of shaping and achieving its agenda. The issue of the regional maritime security strategy, of which we will hear more in the next days, is exceptionally important. We are already talking about it, but there will be a presentation on it, and I'm sure we will hear what colleagues will say when they talk about it. The IOC, Raj, please, this time behave and stick to time. I know Raj can speak the whole day, so please, Raj, the stage is yours.
So my reputation goes beyond me. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for involving the IOC, and I'm very pleased to be here. We've been talking since quite some time, several years already. Now my presentation is a bit different, and I'm sorry, it won't be a complete presentation because you'll have to listen to my colleagues, the director of our COC and that of RMFC tomorrow, and then you'll get a better picture. But because of time, I'll try to be focusing on a few things. In fact, the word that struck me in the title for the presentation was the word synergy. And this is what I'll try to bring in the presentation tomorrow, and that's why I have reformulated the title as the regionally led initiatives in maritime security and synergies with the DCoC Jeddah Amendment. Now, what I did is that I tried to go a bit, and I think it's very important for us to go a bit past in the history of how and why we are here. And I've taken a few points on which I've done some analysis. First, it's very important for us to understand what we're talking about. We're talking about how we improve maritime security in this region. Now, for me, it's indeed, and as it was very well put in the morning I think it was in the intervention of the minister, that, you know, we are dealing with things which are very sensitive. It is linked to sovereignty. It's not me. Yeah, so it's linked to its sovereignty, and that's why, together with this issue of very important issues of sovereignty and sensitivities, it was also very well said by many of the interveners today that individually our countries cannot and will not improve maritime security if we go separately. And that's why you'll see in my title I've used the word regionally led. In other words, let's get the group of countries to be working together. And it is in this context that I believe that there are three regionally led initiatives that needs to be taken care of or considered very closely, one of which is the DCoC. Now, if you look at the DCoC, maritime security architecture, which is in the MASE, and the CEGIMA, you know, the contact group against illicit maritime activities in the region, we can say, but these are the three, I should say, the three blocks within which. Now, if you look at, in the establishment of these three, you'll see that all started during piracy. Piracy, a wake-up call. You have the dates here I mentioned. And DCoC started specifically on piracy, but MSA, Maritime Security Architecture, it started not just with piracy. In fact, on the 7th of October 2010, we organized a ministerial conference of the Eastern and Southern Africa and Indian Ocean in Mauritius, and there was a strategy that was adopted, and I think it would be good to see that, because there were 5 planks of that strategy, the first one being addressing the root causes of piracy. But there were others which we tend to forget a bit. It was mentioned here and there about what is a driver of piracy. Funds, the flow of funds. And this is where COMESA did some job, good work together with Interpol. But there were other things as well. One of the, I believe, most important factor that helped to curb down piracy, which is the prosecution, the legal finish, where we had only 3 countries in the region, Kenya, Seychelles and Mauritius, you know, prosecuting pirates, and which contributed significantly to reduce. So all these were in that strategy that was endorsed on the 7th October 2010. But then, I won't go in the details of all this, but you'll see that again, you'll see a resolution 1851 of the UN Security Council of December 2008, which led to the establishment of the contact group against piracy of the coast of Sierra Leone. So you'll see that there is a flow of a tendency with piracy being the sort of wake-up call, but at the same time addressing this. Now, the DCoC did start the work then, focused more on piracy, was more, you know, IMO based, in hence, you know, the departments concerned by the shipping departments, but then in enlarged. So there was a very significant change in the DCoC process with the Jeddah Amendment, which occurred eventually. MSA, starting from where, you know, 7th of October, then there was an anti-piracy unit that was established in October 2011. Then you had the MARS program funded by the EU, which enabled then to start establishing the maritime security architecture in the region, and the establishment of the 2 regional centers, which are now being viewed as the regional centers which we can use together. You know, by RCOC and DCoC and the others. Now, CGCPS, with the resolution 2608 of December 2021, then prompted in January to establish the CEGIMA, which again is a regionally led mechanism. Now, what is the key thing here is that when you look at the results of these 3, of course, DCoC-GR is still work in progress. You'll hear tomorrow from the presentation or from the director of RCOC and RMFC that there are tangible results already under MSA. On CEGIMA, we can say that this is one of the most important, if not worldwide recognized achievements, where you have curbed down, though it's not yet gone, curbed down piracy. It has to be recognized as one of the most important achievements in this particular area. But then what next? And this is where CEGIMA comes in, which is starting just last year. So now we have to work and see how we can work on it. Now, the point that I was trying to make is about the synergies. The synergy, which means then what is that we should do? And the most important remark is, can we continue to dialogue? And as Martin just said, let's be very down to earth. What is that we could do together? Let's dialogue, each of us. The next point is about the scope. If you look at the geographical scope of each of the 3 initiatives, regionally led initiatives, is that you see the DCoC, it englobes the Gulf Aden, sorry, it's an error here, not Guinea, that's other part of the world. The Western Indian Ocean, of course. MSA is Western Indian Ocean region, but then it is expected to enlarge. Of course, Sejima is Western Indian Ocean and is also expected to enlarge. It means that we are all trying to address nearly the same region. Now, maritime security, if we want to address these, and if you look at what is much more related to maritime security is the movement of the vessels, then it means then because those vessels are not restricted to the specific scope of these three initiatives, we have to look wider. In other words, how can we be looking at the wider region in a context, and this is very important also, we do know that the multilateralism as it is right now, it's in a way shrinking, so it means then we have to see to it that the regionally led initiatives are getting stronger and stronger and larger and larger. So instead of going from the multilateral to the region, let's work together at the region and then get it enlarged. This is where I think we all three should be working together. Now, in terms of the institutional structures of the regionally led initiatives, DCoC, member states driven, as you can see today, tomorrow after tomorrow, but also you have all the partners. In the MSA, it's the signatory states of the countries, of course, for the governance of that architecture, but then the programs, there are two programs, in fact, it's not just the MASE program, there is also Port Security Project, both funded by the EU, both aimed larger than the signatory states. And if you look at the Sejima, of course, it's a platform, but there are many more participants. It's an international platform. It has remained an international platform. And in terms of the institutional arrangements, it's the chair which is driving everything. Now, we can see that this is a very varied type of structures, institutional structures that they exist. So can we not then see to it how we can complement each other and dialogue amongst each of us? Now, as from the executive arms, Martin well said that we have to get things done now, executive arms. In terms of the DCoC, of course, the focus is much more on the national centers, very rightly, very important one. Now, the MSA here is the national centers and the regional centers. And this is where you've heard also this morning that what we are thinking of doing, and that's the synergy part of it, is that why don't we use the same regional centers, but also the fact that all the members of the MSA are also members of the DCoC. So why should we be working separately? Let's work together, reinforce each other, not to be duplicating things, not to be complementing, but to be working together. And I'm very happy to say that, you know, for the last 2-3 years that we've been discussing and talking, we are now aligned fully in how we will be working together. So there is, in fact, a very high potential for all of us to be working together. Now, in terms of the, in terms of, and this is, I believe, the most important aspect of how we can see some progress. DCoC is very right and absolutely important that we focus at national level. There are, at national level, we cannot just be looking at the strategies, but also the national level strategies. What are the focus at national level for each country? Are you fishing? Drug trafficking? Just to remind ourselves, I saw BBC just a few months back, and what I saw the President of the Republic of Seychelles telling in BBC that, you know, we are topping in the world in terms of drug abuse per population. And he mentioned about 10% of the adult population, which I was shocked. But I was really appreciative that the president of a country can come and say, you know, we acknowledge that this is a problem. Then what it means in terms of their strategy. Where are our strategies? The EU has a maritime security strategy. The EU regularly updates it. What are the maritime security strategies in each of the countries? Because we have to see to it at the regional level what exactly each of the countries wants to achieve. What are their challenges? But then you can't have a national maritime security strategy, but you don't have a committee which meets regularly to analyze those information, see to it where it has to hit, what is that it should do, a national level committee, and then a national information sharing center. The vessels that we've seen, for example, in Mauritius, which has caught, in Mauritius, the largest amount of drugs that were caught is from a fishing vessel. That owner had something like 12 fishing vessels and licenses. Did we analyze how much of fish they have caught? All the countries, nearly all the countries in this region have VMSs since the last 18 years. Have each of the countries reported what are each of the licensee, how much it has caught every day, what it has caught, where it has caught, and that this has been subject to a discussion at national level and analyze it and then look at it? We are not doing it. So it's not just a question of national information sharing centers, but also based on national strategies and also national committees concerned by the different players to be working together. Now, if you look at in this table, I've put some questions here and there. We tend to focus on national centers, but we should also look at the two key components on this. Now, I think that this is the bedrock, the most important aspect. And DCoC, you're absolutely right in trying to look at what we should be doing at national level. And this is where IOC, we are committing ourselves, we've already committed ourselves to see to it how we can work with DCoC and what is that we could do, whether it is the regional centers, national committees, and national maritime security strategies. In fact, in the past, we've drafted for all the signatory states, except for France, we've drafted national security strategies, but then it requires that it is being updated by the countries. Now, this should be the most important aspect of our work together between the DCoC, IOC, and the MASID. Now, in terms of the AIMS objectives, I won't go into the details, but if you look at very closely the DCoC, MSA, and SEJIMA, we all have a very clear indication of what exactly we want. But I won't go into the details because I think I'm eating up all my time. And the chair maybe not so happy, you know. He already told me that, you know, you can take the mic and then prevent everyone from speaking, especially just after lunch. Now, I think that what's important is what are the thematic scope of threats and challenges. And here, I think that either DCoC or MSA or SEJIMA, we are all trying to address most of the maritime security challenges. But again, as I said earlier, is that what is the priority for each of the countries? I'm not so sure whether we've looked at it even at national level. So we have to look at those and see to it that at regional level we are addressing that. What is very important is, as it is mentioned, that for DCoC and for MSA, that there is this issue about the whole government approach in trying to understand these. Now, to understand these things, I'd like to take one element. Yes, it's 5 minutes. Martin is very right. We'll have to be very clear about some things. You know, we all talk, for example, we all talk about IU fishing. What does it mean? What are the figures? Who defines IU fishing? What is the I, what is the U, and what is the U? Who is doing IUU? How many countries are prosecuting I's, U, and U? Go and look at the figures. You'll be surprised. Who determines the IU level? Who looks at it very carefully? Who analyzes this? Each of the maritime security threats, these should be on the agenda for the Maritime Security Committee. What is the precise issues we are talking about? Understanding this. And I fear that we are not doing justice to this understanding the real threats. Too much of rhetorics are being pushed higher. We should stop that. And this is one area where we'll have to be working together very closely. Of course, there are some analyses that are done by some experts here and there, but we need to go together. We need to define the threats ourselves. We need to understand it ourselves. And I can take this about IU fishing, we can take it for others as well. How many people are dying because of how many? Do we have the figures? This is where, for example, the RMFC at least is taking the information from all the countries and giving trends that, for example, in 2021, there were 295 people that have died at sea because of security issues.
Please wrap up.
Yes,
Thank you.
I'm finishing. Now, in terms of the actions, I won't go into details, but I'd like us to take a paragraph which is a summary of the first Sejima plenary session of the 24th of May, 2023, that was organized in Kenya. It is there. I won't go and try to talk about that, but I would like to just end by this presentation where we're saying that DCoC and MSA, we've participated in several meetings. I'm just mentioning these. What we need to is to involve each other and dialogue permanently. IOC is organizing, for example, an exercise on MARPOL. Fine, we invite DCoC and all its members. You come, you participate. If it's a meeting where you have to take decisions, it is a internal meeting where decisions are being taken, only signatory states will have to take decisions. Fine, signatory states go and talk. But then if not, in actions, get the other countries to involve. For example, we organized MARPOL Rex 24, where we simulated Wakasho. That was done between 25th to 29th of September. All the countries in the Eastern African countries, from Djibouti to South Africa, were invited, including all the IOC countries and international partners. Let's see to it that in actions, we work together. And here, Chair, I think that I've tried to bring in some lights from my perspective about synergies.
Thank you, Raj. Indeed, the DCoC is a regional organization, and it drives the regional agenda in as far as maritime security issues are concerned. Yes, the multiple organizations simply means that if the coordination is poor, we may have a challenge where maybe 3-4 organizations address the same challenge that is experienced by the beneficiary states. So that is one of the challenges that we are facing at the moment. Cross-subsidization, multiple organizations going to the same country addressing the same challenge, which means other areas are suffering. Raj, thank you. We will arrange a special conference where you are the only speaker next time, don't worry. Commander Arun, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Commander Arun from Indian Navy. Before I get to the agenda for panel discussion regarding creating synergies, I would take about 3 to 5 minutes to discuss model IFCs and NMISs. 3 strategies were discussed in the DCoC strategy roadmap. The first one being to establish and operationalize NMISs in all signatory states. The considerations for implementation are as flashed. Those in red boxes are those which are considered essential and are in addition to what was covered in the strategy roadmap. The second strategy suggests to maximize regional information fusion centers by establishing clear protocols for information sharing. The important considerations are flashed. I would like to amplify on the last bullet towards the economy of effort. The economy of effort is to be considered while selecting the place and number of IFCs and NMISCs to be set up. It is recommended that NMISCs established should be responsible for data fusion and the regional IFCs be responsible for information fusion. Now, as far as model regional IFC is concerned, a memorandum of understanding is considered to be a valuable tool for enhancing coordination amongst regional IFCs and establishing respective charters. It is important to define clear objectives of IFCs and respective areas of responsibility. Area of interest. When I say I stand corrected, area of responsibility, not area of responsibility to make the collaboration successful, because we are envisaging overlap in the areas. The MOU may also include positioning of ILOs from other regional countries. A roadmap for efficient functioning of IFCs is strongly recommended, which will consist of defining the charter with respect to operations, analysis, networking, STRATCOM, and training. Consider taking external expertise from other information fusion centers, scheduling cross visits for sharing of best practices, establishing standard working definitions. The standard working definitions that have been prepared and used by IFC-IOR can be used for reference, and these can be accessed through the QR code. Once the information fusion centers are established, the incidents should be collated appropriately. The reports are to be analyzed. For preparing the reports and analysis, the source of information should be identified. The report should be validated for authenticity, use of analytical tools for preparation, and process of analysis of information to production of report is to be formalized. And the final product is to be tailored for the target audience. Coming to model NMISCs, as far as model NMISCs are concerned, they are expected to collate information from various national agencies. The collated information is to be analyzed through analytical softwares, and then this information is to be fed to IFCs on requirement basis. The process requires dedicated hardware and software for data collation, analytics, and for sharing of information. The training of manpower and requirement which is envisaged for the model NMISC is flashed. Now, coming to few recommendations for formulation of NMISCs, one regional information sharing center may be established, and rest of the information sharing centers may function as NMISCs. The primary focus is on consolidating the efforts and resources into a single regional maritime information center. The NMISCs should be air-gapped from the external network to safeguard data sovereignty and filtering one-way information flow that needs to be shared with regional ICs. IFC-IOR will be pleased to train the personnel on maritime domain awareness and information sharing. Now, coming to the agenda, speaking about creating synergies to reiterate India's commitment and support, IN is looking forward for positioning one DCoC ILO at IFC-IOR in India very soon. Additionally, Indian delegation actively participated in DCoC ISN workshop, which was held in Jeddah, and Maritime Information Sharing Workshop, which was conducted at IFC-IOR. I would like to put it on record that 15 participants from DCoC countries attended the workshop. So to conclude, I would flash the roadmap. The roadmap envisaged refinement of ISN strategy, NMISCs, regional IFCs, and continued refinement in terms of capacity building, adding data sources, and focus on training and gaining expertise. With this, I finished. I would like to conclude by mentioning that alone we can do so little and together we can do so much. Therefore, we firmly believe that collaboration is the key. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander. What we have seen is military discipline there, and definitely. Before I get fired, I have to move with speed. The UNODC, please address us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Toril Vadgama. I'm the Deputy Head of the Global Maritime Crime Programme of the UNODC. So as organised crime groups exploit this large ocean space and jurisdictional limitations of the high seas of the Gulf of Aden and the Western Indian Ocean, we continue to see ongoing but also constantly evolving transnational criminality at sea. And this poses a broad threat as these crimes negatively impact security, stability, and development in the region. So for those of you who don't know us, I'll briefly just talk a little bit about what we do. The Global Maritime Crime Programme assists member states in enhancing and coordinating their efforts to combat maritime crime. In terms of our lines of activity, we provide technical, material, and infrastructural support throughout the entire criminal justice system. So essentially working with law enforcement, with prosecution, the judiciary, as well as detention. We have active programming in mostly all of the DCoC signatory states, which has a real opportunity of being injected into the DCoC/Jeddah Amendment frameworks in order to support this holistic approach. So, speaking of synergies, the DCoC/Jeddah Amendment provides a great platform to enhance coherence and can further provide that unified picture of a regional framework. Rather than asking how we can simply find synergies between DCoC and other capacity building efforts, I think it might be more useful to try and move towards thinking of all the various frameworks and efforts as part of one integrated overall structure. So as UNODC in such an overall structure, we see the DCoC/Jeddah Amendment as the policy discussion to include general themes, provide the directions of required capacity building, and also establishing consensus on approaches and priorities. Secondly, the MARSE framework, which has made immense progress when you look at the RMIFC, the RCOC, as the operational component of implementation of the DCoC. And then ourselves and others such as us, like EU Crimario, CMF, EU-NAV4, EU CAP, IOC, as well as all bilateral national projects, make up part of a capacity building component supporting the MARSE's operational capabilities. So really the key focus needs to be on an integrated approach to tackle gaps both in terms of addressing regional information sharing limitations, as well as building an operational level law enforcement capability to effectively use targeted information to respond to the ever-changing maritime threats in the region. Furthermore, there is clear indications that a deterrent effect of maritime operations would be greatly increased by pursuing a legal process that can secure any legal action. By pursuing a stringent, well-guided legal finish will positively break these business models and deter players from operating in jurisdictions where this legal process is seen to lead to conviction. And last but not least, as my colleague Martin mentioned, global geopolitics are changing, adding new political, social, as well as economic challenges, leading to donor funding shifts in priorities. And hence, now is the time to develop a coherent and integrated framework that closely links policy priorities, operations, and capacity building to more simply articulate and demonstrate better impact and results, and making the most effective use of what may be declining resources and remaining responsive to the ongoing evolution of the maritime security environment in this region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have mentioned a very important point, implementation of the DCoC program through MAZE, through the EU, through the IOC, through bilateral national projects, and many more other friends of ours. And that is where one can look at our friends as the implementing agents of the DCoC. That requires further discussion, and we definitely are going to have that to formalize this type of a relationship. I see the UK, they haven't written the title, but they've written the name, Richard Morris. Richard, you definitely learned something here. South Africa taught you what smash and grab is.
We all enjoy a game, but it's not over until it's finished. And I just remind delegates that South Africa were losing until the last 5 minutes of the match. But it's about the finish that's important, isn't it? Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, delegates. I'll be very brief. You'll be delighted to hear, and I am the last one to speak. So that was me. I'm speaking on behalf of the Royal Navy's MDA programme and the programme manager. I've sneakily got 3 slides for the price of 1 here. So there's a problem that we pretty much all agree about, maritime security in this operating area, in the maritime area. We have some expertise in delivering solutions to that problem. How do you fix it? It's all about information sharing, isn't it? But there's lots of barriers that prevent effective information sharing, but there's a whole lot of benefits that the DCoC is going after. But what do you need to do that? As we've heard from the Working Group 1, it's about getting the national centres going to be effective, from a sovereign point of view, to understand what's going on in your sea area, and then start cooperating with your neighbours, because effective MDA means that you deal with problems that you're encountering at long range, you share the resources, and you make the best effect of the capabilities that you and your neighbours have. And in terms of what we're discussing today, that's about making the information sharing centres and the information sharing network more effective. So what is the UK offering? And I'm almost finished already. You take it as read that we will support, from a UK government perspective, the political outcomes that we're all engaged in delivering. The UK remains a friend of the DCoC. We're all in that endeavour together. Whilst we have provided funding in the past, not so much lately, but for my area, the MDA programme, we will continue on request to provide specialists to the DCoC to carry forward the work of the workshops as directed through this committee. So what is important? We've done that recently, and on request, we can continue to do that. We also provide national and regional centre capability assessments. That's an independent assessment of your national capability. And as others have spoken, actually starting with an effective maritime security strategy is the best place to start, and everything falls out of that. And the capability assessment starts at what is your national strategy and flows all the way to the end of, are you paying your telephone bills, and everything else in between. But part of the information sharing is having a whole series of agreements with your neighbours to share information, but that takes information sharing agreements. We already have, from a UK perspective, from the Royal Navy, a number of information sharing agreements with nations assembled here and some of the organisations. But if it's in your interest to, and you like to have an information sharing agreement with the Royal Navy for white shipping or other information, then that's another service that might be of interest to you. So how do you get access to what we have to offer? Primarily, make your bid through to the IMO Secretariat for the DCoC. Speak to your local British Embassy or High Commission for the defence section. They will be able to plug into us in the Royal Navy or contact me directly. That's it. I told you it would be brief.
Yeah, no, very, very, very brief. You know, indeed, there are lots of barriers when it comes to information sharing. You know, some of the biggest challenges come with the security implementing agents. When you start speaking about information sharing, they say, oh, what are you telling them? You know, then they start interrogating. You can't be sharing information and we haven't ticked it off. Can we give the panel a round of applause? They've done well. And I would have loved 2-3 hands, but unfortunately, time is just not on my side. I would have loved maybe to give some of the audience some chance to speak. Please, okay. The chairperson has been gracious. He says, at least let me allow 3 hands, please, for comments or for questions to my guests here. Any hand? It seems as if everybody is comfortable with what was said. No follow-up statement. Okay, Eunice, I was hoping Eunice won't raise the hand, but I know he likes talking. Eunice, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. I'm not here to talk too much, but I'm sorry to say something. Just allow me to comment one thing. When it comes into the presenters in front of me, I'm not going to prize my counterpart, who is Diania here, for the sake of Somalia, but I'm just focusing on, I'm prizing her, by the way, but I'm just focusing on an issue that I wanted to raise here. I think Martin is here with us. I've been working with him for a long time. And now he has been trying himself to put forward many things that I'm not going to mention here by details. But the effort is made by Martin and his team is something that we cannot deny. For instance, in the case of Somalia, we have successful incidents managed by the government of Somalia through the use of the IRS, which is recently given a permission to us. In there, we can recognize this platform is something that we need to give a huge welcome to Martin. Thank you. That's what I wanted to raise. Thank you, and back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Eunice, and a round of applause for that point. It's a very important one, Eunice. Thank you, colleagues. Our time is over. Raj took all of it. So please, let's grab our seat and let the chairperson proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Ralipenya and the panel. I now call upon Ms. Joyce Awino of Kenya to moderate on the next panel. Distinguished delegates, it is now 15:23. I'm instructed that we need to finish this part of our work by 1600, even earlier if we can afford to do that. So may I please ask the next delegation to really work with me on this one. Over to you, ma'am. And while she is coming, I may as well call her fellow delegates to come, her panelists, and you can just mention them.
Thank you, sir. May I kindly call my discussants? I have Captain Edmund from Madagascar, RMIFC. I have Martin back on the podium from Crimario. I have Lieutenant Commander Derek Wallin from the US Coast Guard, and Said Levani from Comoros. I'll use a slightly different approach. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, while taking this floor, I take the opportunity to highlight that the focus of this panel will be on how information sharing network is key for the success of the Djibouti Code of Conduct Jeddah amendments. As you have heard, my name is Joyce Marangu Awino from Frontier Control in Kenya. And before us, we have an esteemed panel of 4 who will highlight their experience and tools and show us how we can rely on them to achieve the noble objectives of the Jeddah amendments. To start us off, we shall have Captain Edmund. His name is very long, who will, sorry. Captain Edmund, who is a Malagasy naval officer and maritime affairs administrator. He has extensive expertise in law of the sea, maritime law, administration of maritime affairs, as well as maritime defense, safety, and security. He will highlight the role of the RCOC and RMIFC in support of the DCoC information sharing network. He will be followed by Said Lavani, who is the International Liaison Officer from Comoros at the RMIFC, who will share with us the recommendations for the Djibouti Code of Conduct regional workshop that was held in Saudi Arabia that developed the standard operating procedures. Said is an active officer from the Comoran Coast Guard and also has experience with the Comoran Maritime Operations Center. He will be followed by Martin, who needs no introduction, the director at Crimario 2. He's also a retired Naval Coast Guard officer and has served in the Armed Forces of Malta for 27 years. Martin will show us how IORIS, as a platform sponsored by the EU Crimario 2, has capacity to enhance maritime capacity within the Djibouti Code of Conduct, and how IORIS can translate from a platform to focus on maritime operations. And our final discussant will be from the US Coast Guard, Lieutenant Commander Derek Wallin, who is in the Maritime Law Enforcement Branch of the US African Command and has a wide experience in maritime safety and security within the US Coast Guard that have seen him earn numerous commendations. He will take us through the Sea Vision as a maritime domain awareness tool and highlight how it will add value to the information sharing centers, all aimed at showing how we can grow the Djibouti Code of Conduct information sharing network. Take the floor, gentlemen.
Honorable ministers and deputy ministers, distinguished delegates, I'm Captain Randianontenine from Madagascar, national focal point for DCoC. It is a great pleasure for me to take a few minutes to talk about the role of the two regional centers, the MASE centers, which are the RMFIC, Regional Maritime Information Fusion Center, and the RCOC, Regional Coordination Operations Center, in supporting the DCoC ISN. In my presentation, it will be having a basis on what Mr. Raj from IOC have said, and it will be more elaborated by the two directors of the regional centers tomorrow. Having said that, I will touch upon 3 points. First, the DCoC information sharing network. Secondly, the roles of the two regional centers. And then thirdly, in conclusion, what kind of support those two regional centers can give to the DCoC information sharing network. First of all, we can see here the map of the DCoC countries. At the beginning, the information sharing network of the DCoC was based on the 3 information sharing centers, namely ISC Dar es Salaam, ISC Mombasa, and ISC Sana, which is also the regional maritime information sharing center, which I'm glad to say that I've heard from the delegation from Yemen that it will be operating very soon, also the REMISC. After the JEDA amendment, the main focus, apart from the 3 ISCs for the DCoC countries, is the development of the National Maritime Information Sharing Center for each participating states, which will be to coordinate the activities of national agencies engaged in maritime security and maritime law enforcement, and to facilitate the activities of the National Maritime Security and Facilitations Committee as per the Article 3 of the JEDA amendment. In this regard, the main focus is on multi-agency approach, plus an inclusive approach of the treatment of maritime crime and illegal or illicit activities at sea. In this particular issue, some DCoC states has already developed their national information sharing center, such as, for example, Kenya, the Seychelles, and Madagascar as examples. The aim of these, the DCoC ISN is to facilitate improved regional maritime security, law enforcement, and governance capabilities in order to support maritime sector development and a sustainable blue economy. Having said that, what are then the offer from the RMFIC and RCOC by looking at their roles? Based on our 2 regional agreements with 7 signatory states, which are basically a DCoC member states, there has been the establishment of the 2 regional centers, the RMFIC based in Madagascar and the RCOC based in the Seychelles. Basically, we have here the 2 missions and respective missions of the 2 centers. For the RMFIC, it is mainly to collect, fuse, and analyze maritime information, to establish MSA, and RMP, and to provide operationally significant maritime information to the national centers, and of course, to its sister centers, the RCOC, and to produce reports and studies. In terms of deliverables, they provide VOI, reports and studies on maritime security and safety, whereas the RCOC has a main mission to coordinate missions of regional interest on state actions at sea, including the list on the PowerPoint. As deliverables, they can help the state in the region by conducting operation at sea of regional interest. You can see here the flow of information of the DCoC, ISN, and the regional network, as well as the international network. And we can see that in the regional side, we have the RMFIC as well as the RCOC. In conclusion, the two regional centers can participate in supporting the DCoC ISN mechanism through the support in information sharing, that is basically actionable maritime information, and two, to support the DCoC countries in operations at sea having a regional dimension. On that note, thank you very much for your attention.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Said Lavani. I am an active officer from the Comorian Coast Guard, detached at the Regional Maritime Information Fusion Center, based in Madagascar. I'm going to present with you the proposal for enhancement of the Djibouti Code of Conduct Information Sharing Network. Where are we come from? Following the approval of the Djibouti Code of Conduct Information Sharing Network in the high-level meeting in Dubai on June 2022, and the other high-level meeting held on November 2022 in Jeddah, after the Information Sharing Network workshop, which deliberated on the need to identify the joint DCoC doctrine to govern information sharing at national level with DCoC partner nation, regional centers, and within international partners, and have joined all the SOP, Standard Operation Procedure for Information Sharing workshop, which was held in July to August 2023 in Jeddah. The last high-level meeting agreed to have signatory state use and refine the draft SOP with intent to endorse at the next high-level meeting, with a view of having them in common practice by close of 2023, and focus be led on information sharing at national level to achieve regional cooperation. The key component of the information sharing network strategy and roadmap, signatory state of the Djibouti Code of Conduct are committed to the following: establish National Maritime Security Committee structure, which oversees the work of the operationalized National Maritime Information Sharing Center. effectively utilizes the information it's provided in national maritime security decision making. National agencies cooperate in sharing information through National Maritime Information Sharing Center. Member states of the Djibouti Code of Conduct are also committed to ensure initial operating capability by March 2024. Friends of the Djibouti Code of Conduct cooperate in sharing information, including through Memorandum of Understanding established with National Maritime Information Sharing Center and regional centers. Analysis of incident by regional center distinguishes pattern in illicit maritime activities and support disruption of maritime crime by guiding regional policy decision. On July to August 2023 in Jeddah, it has held a regional workshop on standard operating procedure. Participants, they come out by drafting an SOP, a booklet, which the structure are the following. Inside the SOP booklet, you will find abbreviation, executive summary and background information, mission, vision and core values, role and function of National Maritime Security Committees and National Maritime Information Sharing Centers. You will find also duties and responsibility of the National Maritime Information Sharing Center personnel, working definition and categorization of the maritime safety and security incident, the vessel of interest lexicon. You will find also data fusion procedure, which we call OODE loop model, and also thematic analysis and reporting procedure, daily procedural SOP and battle rhythm, including request for information and incident report form. We will find contact details of all National Maritime Information Sharing Center, and finally the acknowledgement section. Let's watch together a video of 3 minutes, which highlighting the event. But according to the team of the IMO, we do not have time we can play the video, please, for 3 minutes? Okay, please. The video will summarize the event.
The maritime threat scenario in the Western Indian Ocean and the Gulf of Aden is continually evolving, with emerging new threats like cyber attacks on ships, ports, and critical coastal infrastructure, as well as maritime terrorism and new modes of attacks on ships and vital coastal installations using drones or mines. Drawing lessons from regional experiences in combating piracy and armed robbery, signatory states to the Jeddah Amendment of the Djibouti Code of Conduct have agreed to establish a robust information sharing network to strengthen cooperation among their countries and effectively confront these challenges through resolute information sharing. The regional initiative to enhance information sharing is spearheaded by the DCoC Working Group 1 on Information Sharing. Under this framework, a 10-day information sharing workshop that culminated in the development of the standard operating procedures, mostly known as SOPs, for National Maritime Security Information Sharing Centers within the DCoC JA Information Sharing Network, was held at the Jeddah Academy for Maritime Science and Security Studies from 30th July to 10th August in 2023. The workshop was designed to follow up on the resolutions of the 2022 Jeddah High-Level Meeting with the development of the National Maritime Information Sharing Centers that promote interoperability and developing a regional network that is fit for purpose. The SOP document explores the OODA loop model based on observing, orienting, deciding, and acting in responding to maritime threat scenarios. This means that national centers should collect data from credible sources, that's observing, analyze the gathered information, determine appropriate responses, and execute the determined decision. The document then proceeds to break down the procedures for each thematic area. We sample a piracy incidents at sea, for instance. The duty officer of the involved information sharing center at a national level receives the threat alert via any maritime security platform or intelligence agency and verifies the information with other external sources such as regional centers or international entities monitoring threats at sea. The officer then informs the country's maritime representative, or what we call a local focal point, and the law enforcement agency. A security warning is also issued to other concerned entities such as coastal stations. An initial report is then issued to the IMO under the regulator's Maritime Security Committee guidelines. The National Information Sharing Center staff continue monitoring the threat alert and log its communication in the logbook. Assistance in identifying the presence of the affected vessel is also provided to the local focal point, and a follow-up report with additional information on the situation is shared with stakeholders. These procedures generically apply to all thematic areas but can have slight variations based on a contextualized view of the threat in question. Let's take the trafficking and contraband smuggling SOPs, which have a worksheet providing additional particulars like the specific national information sharing staff involved and their roles at the point of an incident. This worksheet also provides details of the smuggler, victims of smuggling, goods smuggled, crew and vessel identities, as well as initial and follow-up actions in the said incident. These SOPs will serve as a comprehensive guide to facilitate seamless information exchange and cooperation among participating entities in line with the objectives of the Djibouti Code of Conduct and its JEDA amendment. The development of the standard operating procedures was made possible by the DCoC JA Information Sharing Network alongside its partners.
Following the development of the SOP standard operating procedure in the Jeddah workshop, another workshop on maritime information sharing was held in India to fine-tune the SOP, and the product at the high-level meeting today has included the recommendation of the best practices learned during the Indian workshop. It is included the need to have a National Maritime Security Committee coordinator who ran with implementation of the National Maritime Security Committee on a day-to-day basis in order to ensure implementation and sustainability of action undertaken. Following the India meeting, it was noted that there is a need for having memorandum of understanding with the regional centers in the Djibouti Code of Conduct Information Sharing Network in the objective to enhance interoperability and modalities of information flow to meet the goal of enhancing maritime domain awareness. The assumption to consider: the National Maritime Information Sharing Center will domesticate the SOP to suit their respective centers. International advocacy necessary to convince government of the value of prioritizing maritime security and combating seabloodness. Regionally, government will be at varying level of buy-in. Progress, big progress, even small victories are important piece to the overall pictures. Not all information will need to be shared between partners and states. The recommendation for consideration: signatory states of the Djibouti Code of Conduct are all agreed to ensure initial operating capability by March 2024, to have the SOP be actualized and operationalized, endorse and approve the SOP for use, noting that it is a living document and will be domesticated in signatory state and improved as and when the need arises. They are also agreed to consider having MOU with the regional centers for an effective information sharing modality with the Djibouti Code of Conduct framework. Partners are requested to provide an opportunity for testing of the SOP through exercises for their effectiveness. Under Djibouti Code of Conduct, there is two working groups. Working group number 1, which is in charge of information sharing, and working group number 2, which is in charge of capacity building. That's working group number 2 is emphasis on capacity building matrix in meeting gaps as highlighted in the information sharing network establishment and operationalization. This is the National Manning and Communication for National Maritime Information Sharing Center. It just explained that within the National Maritime Information Center, there will be various law enforcement agencies divided into 4 phases. We will have a core agencies, supporting agencies, and consulted agencies. Each agency will have its own MDA tools to facilitate its key missions. For example, the Fishery Department, which is one of the core agencies, will have the vessel monitoring system as its specific MDA tools for monitoring all fishing vessels which are registered on its own system. On the other hand, there will be common platform mainly used for exchanging and sharing information relating to maritime safety and security, such as Mercury and EORIS, Indian Ocean Region Information Sharing Platform, developed by our friend Crimario. Please note that all those agencies which are working together, some other national and international agencies may be required to carry out the NEMIF's missions. Slide, please. So inside the center, since the center will be staffed by different multi-agencies, there may sometimes be misunderstanding and even conflict of competence. That is why during the mission, since we are different agencies which are acting on that NEMIFs, conflict may be arise during the management of maritime safety and security incident at national level. Each country may say, I am the lead, who I supposed to undertake this, who coordinate this operation. For that perspective, it is important to identify the lead of national agencies and another supporting agency is highlighted, is recommended, and should be cleared, stipulated in the SOP. In the SOP, we have to stipulate it and clear that if we have such incidents, the leading agency will be such agencies, so that we can avoid complicate between the agencies. For example, let's say, in the case of marine pollution, the Environment Department will be identified as the lead agency. It will be assisted and supported by the Coast Guard. So another incident, let's say, for example, the EU fishing activity, but the Fishery Department will take the lead of managing the incident. Please, another slide. This has already explained by Director Admo, but let's talk a little bit about the flow chart. This is the information flow drafted under the Djibouti Code of Conduct Information Sharing Network, highlighting the interaction with the regional and international network. We can see on the left, at the regional level, member states of the Djibouti Code of Conduct are all required to share maritime safety and security information to the Indian, with the EFC, Information Fusion Center, for the EORA, which has been explained by our friend from India, as well as member states of the Djibouti Code of Conduct are also required at the regional level to share information to the regional centers of MAZE, which are the Regional Maritime Information Fusion Center located in Madagascar, and the Regional Center of Operation Coordination at Sea located in Seychelles. Note that MAZE program, this Maritime Architecture program is a program which is funded by the European Union, but it's piloted by the Indian Ocean Commission. Note that at the international level, as we can see in the right, member states also are required, if necessary, to share information to the EQMTO, MSC SHOA, European Naval Force, JOGS, RECAP, and also to the private partners such as IMO, Maritime Industry, through Mercury, Sea Vision, and EORIS. Thank you very much.
I allowed him a little bit of excess because the core of this workshop is the SOPs. Thank you.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, once again. I'm sorry I have to take the floor so soon, wasn't expecting it myself. The brief I'm about to give is concerning the operationalization of IORIS now. We spent 2 to 3 years bringing the different partners onto the platform, and now we're moving into a phase where we are really going forward. But let me go to, next slide please, why we are here and what we are doing. So we all hear about the importance of why we exchange information time and time again, okay? Maritime threats, no borders. We want to prevent and deal with incidents. We want to support our friends and partners deal with difficult situations. The question that we infrequently answer is how we exchange information. And this is where Cremario went into action some 3 years ago and started looking at how we can contribute in this manner. And there are 4 challenges when it comes to sharing, exchanging information. The first is the change in culture, the mindset. So it's always safer if we don't share information, we think. But we need to move from a culture of need to know to responsibility to share if we really want to make a difference, if we really want to be safe. The second challenge is the political buy-in. And I have to say that whenever I meet and brief senior officials, they are generally very, very willing to come on board with this concept that we have developed. But then the real challenge is converting the political will into operational implementation. That is the challenge. But we're making progress there again. The next challenge is the language barrier, because people speak different languages. If they don't understand one another, obviously, there's a bit of reluctance to exchange information. And the fourth challenge is the complexity of the shipping industry. Port states, flag states, coastal states, nationality of the flag, cargo, ship owner, etc., all very complex. Next, please. So way back in 2018, with Dave Natras in the lead, Cremario 1 started developing IORIS. What is IORIS? IORIS is an information exchange system, but it is not an EU information exchange system. It is an information exchange system which the EU has sponsored for the region, originally Western Indian Ocean, but in the meantime we have expanded now all the way across South Asia, Southeast Asia, the Pacific, to Latin America. It is a platform which has 2 main strengths. Communications, so similar to what you have on your phone, WhatsApp, if I may. But the real forte is coordination. So if partner countries or agencies need to collaborate and conduct an operation to do it, it's very difficult by email, it's very difficult by sending WhatsApp messages. But through IORIS, the value is that you have a map, an active map, which combines with the chat. And apart from that, you also have got a place where you can archive and share documents. Using the WhatsApp analogy again, because it's very simple to understand, the philosophy is you create groups, and the administrator of the group decides who joins the group, and only those inside that group have access to the information being exchanged. And to be clear, Crimario is not in those groups, okay? This is a salient difference, that's a salient point that you should take in mind. This is why we always try and make the platform as neutral as possible. It is secure and encrypted. It is web-based, so you don't have to download any software. You just have to log into the system. It can be used and is used by vessels at sea, and in a way, it's a virtual operation center. Next, please. So what are the advantages of having a common system? First of all, we are moving towards an IORIS government system, and we've already made a lot of progress in that. And the users decide what information they want to share. So they're not putting all the information they want into the platform. If there's a suspect ship and they want to inform the neighbors about, they can do that. But the choice is always theirs. It's a cost-effective solution. Developing IORIS costs between 2 and 3 million euros. Now, there are 21 countries of the DCoC here. Imagine that there are 2 agencies in each country which need an info exchange system, right? That's 42 systems. 40 systems times 3 million euros. Look how much money is being saved if we had to adopt a common system. Even if you had to have 42 different info exchange systems, the challenge is then having them speak to each other, because it's pointless. If you need to share information with your neighbor, you need to have a link. To develop such a link, for each time, it costs between 200,000 and 300,000 euros in software development. So look at the cost savings there. And the other advantage, finally, is that you have a common operational picture. What you are seeing on the map, your neighbor is also seeing on the map. Same picture. Next, please. We started in the Western Indian Ocean back in 2018, and that's why you see all the purple spots on the west side of the map, and we have progressed towards Latin America. There are countries which are awaiting training, there are countries with which we are in discussion, and there are the yellow spots which are shared, and I'll come to it later. You'll also see EU member state flags. Why are those there? They are there because if and when an EU naval platform goes to the region, we train them on IORIS, so when they are in the region, they are able to interoperate with the coastal states, either to exercise or to conduct any kind of operation. I could add the US flag there because the US Coast Guard used the system a month ago with Peru in a Latin American exercise, but I thought in this particular case, I dare not put it on the slide. Next, please. So let's imagine that you switch on IORIS. What are you going to see? On the left-hand side, you're going to see a map, interactive map, which you can zoom in and zoom out. It's a sea chart, so when it comes to IUU fishing, you will see where the reefs are, which is helpful. In the green boxes, that is satellite AIS. So, important difference here with Sea Vision. We do not acquire information from states. We do not put EU information into the system. All the information that is there, and all it is AIS, is commercial AIS. So we get it from Spire, and we felt we needed to do it just to have a reference. You'll also see on the right-hand side the messaging area. What is important over there to note is the script. With IORIS, you can now write in any language. The recipient will translate it into his own, send back in his own, and the recipient will then retranslate. So the language barrier I mentioned at the beginning is now gone. There is no language barrier, right? So theoretically, you could have Mozambique, Tanzania, and South Africa, English, Portuguese, and French-speaking countries, interoperating together on IORIS with no challenges. Next, please. So I mentioned that you create groups. The question is, the institutionalization of those groups so that it is organized in a manner where there's no overlap. And you can create groups which are single service. So I'll give the example of the Philippines Coast Guard. They link all their coastal stations now together through IORIS. The next way of exchanging information is interagency. So you have the Kenya DCoC, for example, which can exchange information with the different agencies in Kenya using IORIS. You can then also use IORIS at the regional level, where you can get countries cooperating together or even regional organizations. Next, please. So if you have many groups, the question is, how do you see all the information going on in the groups? Maritime operations centers in this day and age have a lot of screens on the walls, and obviously there's limited space to where IORIS can be projected. So you change groups by simply clicking on the blue boxes, and that way you move from community area to community area, from chat to chat. You can also see on the map EEZs. They can be switched on and they can be switched off. Next, please. We're moving ahead. I mentioned operationalization at the beginning of the discussion. What do I mean exactly? So we have different clusters coming together to deliver community areas. And here we have 3 examples which exist. The first is the Roja area, which is a geographic community area, geographic group, which is administered by Yemen. And it includes countries which are on the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, Horn of Africa, and the Gulf of Oman, Roja, that's the abbreviation. So that's a geographic grouping. But then you can also have thematic groupings, and over here we have 2, where we have the French island of Réunion, which has created 2 groups of a thematic nature. One is to monitor shipping, which is traversing across international trade routes, so that shipping which is of a hazardous nature can be reported to one another. They can give a heads up. And the second is one which links the different maritime rescue coordination centers together. So now there is actually a working group, and these centers work together in exchanging lessons learned, coordinating rescues, etc., on IORIS. Next, please. Whilst Crimario does not do surveillance and data analysis, we leave that to the Civision side of the house. What we have done is, since LNI has developed this tool Skylights and offered it to all the countries here, what we have done is made an API key, and information from Skylights can now be overlaid on an IORIS map. But Ted will discuss a bit more about that particular point in his brief. Next, please. Moving ahead, we're now looking at linking IORIS with merchant shipping. So if merchant ships, for example, are going through choke points or areas which are sensitive, they'll be able to log into areas which are managed by coastal stations. Whoops, okay. And next, please. The advantage is that obviously navies and coast guards do not have enough assets out there to be able to see what is going on. So if the merchant ships could support them, this would obviously improve maritime domain awareness. It's also a cost-effective solution, because what I didn't mention is that Crimario buys the license for all the countries to use, and merchant ships would not have to buy any license themselves because they are plugging into the pictures of coastal states. Next, please. Here are examples of how IORIS can be used. Can be used against piracy, armed robbery, terrorism, protecting critical infrastructures, supporting company security officers make their assessments, and for maritime safety, like I mentioned, maritime traffic monitoring, search and rescue coordination, combating marine oil pollution, harbor master and port operations. Next, please. So IORIS is a tool which is operational and can be used today and is used today amongst countries, etc., etc. But I mentioned in my previous brief that Crimario is a maritime capacity building project, and the IORIS also has a mirror training platform, and on that training platform we organize exercises, and this is one of my favorite examples. because it involves 7 countries, 17 agencies, was conducted over 4 days, dealt with a search and rescue exercise at sea, you know, a Malaysian Airlines type of incident in the middle of the Indian Ocean. How do you coordinate? IORIS could be a solution. Next, please. I also mentioned that we're supporting the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium. The platform can be used by vessels at sea. So now you have got a way through which vessels at sea and coastal stations can share an operational picture. Next, please. Moving to IORIS governance, and these are the final slides. So when I took over the project back in 2020, my marching orders were hand IORIS over to the region. So we had to develop a strategy which would give our partners the confidence to adopt this system. And we had a first brainstorming session in the Seychelles, and many of you were here already. Next, please. This moved to the first IORIS governance steering committee meeting, which happened last May in Bali, and again, many of you were present. We had to create a way through which partner countries would be encouraged to use the system. So we have a way through which the different members are graded according to the uptake of IORIS. The more they use IORIS, the more say they have in the development of the platform. Next, please. And one output is participation in the policy, operational, technical, and legal working groups of the IORIS Steering Committee. And this is the first meetings that we had just last week in Nairobi, which was quite a success. I will mention that at this working group, the regional IORIS SOPs for the Indo-Pacific were endorsed. Now, what are these SOPs? They do not compete or conflict with the DCoC SOPs because they build on them, right? The DCoC SOPs are there to define how incidents at sea are dealt with. The IORIS SOPs build on those, supporting the DCoC SOPs so that the operation can be implemented through IORIS. This is what it's about. Next, please. Finally.
Please wind up.
Yes, this is the last slide. So IORIS is one system, but there are other systems out there. US has Sea Vision. Indians have developed their own system. The Singapores have their system. The issue is that these systems don't speak to each other. So together with UNODC, we developed the Share It Interoperability Contract framework where the different systems can, in the future, interconnect with one another and speak to each other digitally and securely. So this is the overall ambition which we're hoping to accomplish in the future with the partners, especially the regional centers. Next, please. So basically, this concludes my... So basically, this concludes my brief. Basically, I just want to underline that Crimario offers its partners zero-cost products, so all the cooperation you do with us comes at no cost, and the philosophy behind this is that if we all work towards safer seas, trade will flourish and all will win. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Again, I'm Lieutenant Commander Derek Wallen, U.S. Coast Guard. I work at U.S. Africa Command. And I realize I'm in between you guys on a break before the gala, so I will be very quick. I'll try and give Richard a run for his money. So, Sea Vision, you guys have all heard of it. You guys have most likely all used it or seen it in action. So I'm not going to be technical about it. I want to talk about the operation point of view. But what is it? It is the U.S. Navy's unclassified maritime domain awareness tool. It's used to share info with allies and partners to improve overall maritime domain awareness. This slide shows the operational view of Sea Vision. It should really be used, as we've kind of talked about already, as a layered defense strategy to allow for utilization of as many or as few resources needed to accomplish the mission. Sea Vision addresses maritime issues related to these 4 categories: safety, security, economic, and environmental. You can use it for any and all of these. The command center, the little picture there in the bigger picture, it kind of shows how activities are monitored within the territorial waters and the exclusive economic zone. It can use coastal radar, AIS, satellite imagery, and radar can detect and identify vessels in an area, and the data is then correlated and displayed within Sea Vision. Dark contacts are combated by using satellite radar imagery to map the waters and then correlate those targets. The use of Sea Vision should be integrated into a mock SOP as a standardized option. Right. All the data displayed within Sea Vision comes from unclassified sources and is accessed through a web browser and user account licensed through the U.S. Navy. AIS is the primary geospatial data displayed in Sea Vision. Satellite imagery and other satellite-based sensors are correlated and then displayed within Sea Vision. In the next slide, we're going to talk about the maritime databases which are integrated there. Here we see the International Maritime Organization Ship Registry database, which Sea Vision pulls from and provides inputs to allow users a detailed picture to include the registration details, ownership history, port state control inspection records, and port call records. And almost done. As with almost anything, using the correct tools, the more data you have available, the clearer your picture is. So using follow-on resources such as open-sourced AI, radar integration, for example, like Nigeria does, can provide complementary tools to your maritime domain awareness toolbox. Just like IORIS, these are many tools that you can use to be successful in your maritime security efforts. The data shown here comes from open-sourced AI, which provides data for the user to further drill down into Sea Vision. So those were just pulled. You implement your Sea Vision picture, and you combine those two to then have a good operational pictures for those going out on the water of where they need to go and how they need to get there. And in closing, just a quick sea story. I worked in South Florida for a long time with the U.S. Coast Guard. The command centers had a large common operating picture, but to geographically focus operations against drug and human smuggling was very difficult. We learned to work with the local police, marine units, and utilize their locally sourced radar stations along the beach to identify targets of interest and efficiently enable operational units on the water to respond. All agencies and organizations must utilize the partnerships here in this room and all your tools available that we've been talking about and we will continue to talk about to secure the maritime domain. Again, this is just one tool to allow you guys to further those efforts. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll just do a quick summation, and I appreciate all of you gentlemen for your excellent presentation. From the foregoing, it is therefore clear that as proposed within the DCoC information sharing strategy and roadmap, information sharing centers and monitoring tools are key for the achievement of the stated objectives. We have seen, one, how an effective information exchange system through SOPs allows for better coordination in combating illicit maritime activities. Secondly, we have also heard how information sharing is central to building trust, and this is enhanced further by the use of common tools at the disposal of all information sharing centers indiscriminately. Thirdly, we've also heard how information sharing is also a basis for joint decisions, actions, and interdiction operations. Fourthly, we've also heard that information sharing also results in transparency through a multi-agency approach. Finally, the formation of partnerships through these information sharing and shared tools, as has been presented by Sea Vision and IORIS, will therefore lead to the strengthening of an action on maritime security situation in the region at both national and regional levels that will ensure collective global effect as well as enable the identification of local and foreign improvements within the maritime security situation. I don't think I have, I'll open the time for the chair. I believe for panel discussions. I believe the Secretariat is open for comments through the chair at a different forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Joyce. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation that we need to manage. We are going to need this venue for the gala dinner later, and apparently we need time to reorganize it for that purpose. Consulting with the leadership that I'm sitting with here, we've agreed that we would rather move that last panel to tomorrow morning. So we shall start with it, which means that this then made our last panel for the day. May I call upon my facilitator to come and conclude the day and deal with matters for ongoing consideration overnight. I'm not going to come back here, so he will close the session. The announcement for the day is that the buses will leave from here to the hotel at the conclusion of the session, and they will leave from the hotel back here for the commencement of the 1800 gala dinner. Thank you very much. Over to you, Chris.
Good afternoon, everybody. I will be brief, I promise, or you can throw things at me. It's been a very, very busy day. We started with the objectives, and you all know what they are. Everything we are doing is towards those objectives. So I'm not going to read them out again. Everything is on the website. All the papers, all the presentations, and so on. So if I take a leaf out of the Indian Navy's book and say I'm going to flash through that, you can read it later. Okay, so the objectives are there. We've had a pretty good day. We started with, after the opening ceremonies, had some briefings, an update on the DCoC progress. So that's Mitch on top of Lion Rock, by the way, just in case you're wondering. Apparently concrete action is the key, was a message from IMO. We then went into the EU NAV4 briefing. We got really good updates on piracy and armed robbery, spillover from land conflicts, IUU fishing, narcotics, weapon smuggling. What's actually going on out there, what we need to be addressing. We then moved on to IFC IOR's briefing. They obviously address all of those things, piracy, armed robbery, smuggling, but also other facets, the irregular migration, the safety, climate change, cyber, environmental, stuff that we need to be taking into account if we're looking at maritime strategies going forward. Collaboration is the key, lots of keys. But what lessons from what they are doing can we apply to the information sharing network? So think about that as we go forward for your discussions tomorrow. And what does it mean for the maritime security strategy? Question mark. We then had the briefings from the DCoC steering group, and together we can ensure safety and security of maritime trade routes. It's that working together bit. We then had some comprehensive briefings from the working groups. Working Group 1 on the need for a whole-of-government approach in line with a national maritime security strategy, which we'll look at tomorrow. Adoption of the DCoC SOPs, which we've heard about today. The need for national maritime information sharing centres and the assessment of their current status. bearing in mind there is an ongoing commitment for them to be in place by next year, just saying. Adoption of the MOU between the DCoC and the Marse IFCs will be coming up tomorrow. Proposal for a vessels of interest database and the proposal for DCoC liaison officers at IFC IOR. So those are things for you to be thinking about there. We then had Working Group 2's briefing, the aspiration no state left behind, a request for EU funding under the Safe Seas project, but also a much wider request for funding from anywhere we can get it, really. We looked at country success stories. There have been some really good successes so far, small wins heading in the right direction. We need to be screaming about those and generating more of them, because success breeds success. And that practical collaboration, those are the messages coming out of Working Group 2. We had the briefing from the Friends of the DCoC, which is capacity building activities and those success stories going on, the progress in re-establishing the REMISC in Aden, the workshops on security governance, information sharing, train the trainers, over 1,800 people trained. So there's some really good work going on. We need to keep that momentum going. And there's panel 1 discussing away. And then during the panel 1 discussion, we had from UCAP Somalia on the importance of national ownership, developing the National Maritime Information Sharing Centre there. We had the presentation from Camario on proposing things like capacity generating conferences and shared training establishments, but also drawing attention to the global stresses that are going on that are removing the focus from what we're trying to achieve onto other areas. We had the presentation on behalf of the sort of coordination between IOC, EU Marse, CGIMA, and DCoC and the need to work together. We had the presentation from IFC IOR, looking at the numbers of information sharing, fusion centres, overlaps, need for MOUs, support to DCoC. And here we've got another key, collaboration. And then the UNODC's Global Maritime Crime Programme, looking at the evolving nature of transnational criminality at sea. Wasn't it so much easier when it was just pirates? One integrated overall structure with Marse as an operational focus, others as capacity building, question mark. Something for you to discuss as we go forward. What are the respective roles? And the need for legal finish, impact and results. And then we had the presentation from Royal Navy on national centres for sovereign MDA, shared capabilities, and the UK's continuing will to support workshops and national strategy development. So all good stuff there. We then went on to panel discussion 2, and we had the RCOC talking about the RCOC and RMIFC roles in sharing, on information sharing and operational coordination. We had Comoros on recommendations from the DCoC ISN network and the Indian Maritime Information Sharing Workshop. So good stuff going forward there, forming the meat of the work that's going to be done here. Progress begets progress, so thank you for that. Crimario 2, we looked at just briefly, just a few seconds ago, EORIS as an information sharing system and US Coast Guard on Sea Vision as an MDA tool. I won't try and sum up that panel discussion because I can't compete with Joe's, really. It's just not on. So going forward, the presentations we were supposed to have this afternoon from India and from Skylight, with your permission, tomorrow morning, please. First thing, so you've got something to look forward to. The presentations are on the website, the information is on the website, the SOPs are on the website. If you feel like doing some homework, read those. If you don't, enjoy the gala dinner. That's me. Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, any comments, questions? Or, yes. I believe it's in this room, which is why we're finishing now.
Thanks, Mr. Facilitator. Just to recap again, the buses leave any minute from now from outside to go to the hotel, and they come back at what time, Mashudu? From the hotel back to here? 17:30, I'm advised. So you get into the hotel, change and get right out again. We see each other. Sorry, just one announcement from my deputy chair. He requested that we start half an hour earlier tomorrow so that we have time to carry out this work. My deputy. Thank you. Thank you very much, distinguished delegates. The meeting is now dismissed for the day.